Welcome to Season 8 of the Finding Peace podcast. This season is focused on practical, trauma-informed tools you can use in everyday life. When emotions run high, relationships feel heavy, or your nervous system needs support. Short episodes designed to help you find more peace, joy, and connection, one moment at a time. Please welcome the host of the Finding Peace podcast, best-selling author, psychotherapist, and speaker, Troy L. Love.
It's 7 a.m. in the morning. I'm a senior in high school, and I'm sitting in the dentist's chair. Paper bib clipped around my neck. That faint antiseptic smell in the air. The hum of equipment that makes everything feel more serious than I want it to be. I'm about to get my wisdom teeth taken out. The anesthesiologist has been scheduled. This is supposed to be the easy version. Lights out, teeth gone, wake up, go home, eat pudding. So I ask, very matter-of-factly, will I be able to go to school after this? The room pauses. Oh no, they say gently, you'll need to go home afterwards. And that's when the problem appears because going home is not an option. I can't go home, I say. I am directing a video for my class today. There's a long silence. The dentist looks at me the way one would look at someone who's just suggested skydiving with a grocery bag. You can't go to school afterwards, especially if you get the anesthesia. That's going to knock you out. You're going to feel really tired for the rest of the day. Well, I have to be there, I insist. We are filming today, and I'm the director. Another pause. Another look. What if I don't get put under? What if you just give me a shot or something? Can I go to school then? The dentist looks at me like I'm crazy. He says, well, I guess, but I really don't recommend it. You're not going to feel good. I think you should go home after this. I say, I think I don't want to be put under. I think you should just give me the shot or something. The anesthesiologist, whose entire job today is to put me unconscious, becomes suddenly unnecessary. And just like that, the anesthesiologist is sent home, but not me. No IV, no counting backwards, no waking up loopy and confused. Just shots, pressure, cracking sounds no one should hear inside their own skull. 45 minutes later, I walk out of the office with swollen cheeks and bloody gauze packed into my mouth like I'm storing napkins for later like a chipmunk. And then I go to school. I show up to direct the student video. I try giving instructions through cotton and metallic tasting numbness. Can you move the camera a little bit to the left? As I adjust the gauze. People stare at me. A little bit of blood dribbles down my chin. I smile, which is a terrible idea because it mostly looks like I'm auditioning for a zombie film, but the shoot goes on. Because that's what I did when my Martyr told me that my class would not be able to survive without me. They're counting on you, my Martyr said. And so I kept going. With a tight jaw, heavy cheeks, and a lot of blood. A mouthful of bloody gauze that didn't taste very good. I was exhausted. And then after the movie was done, I decided I should probably go home. I was that guy. You know the type. The neighbor who somehow becomes the unofficial HOA president without ever running for office. The parent who volunteers once for the PTA and ends up managing the fundraiser, the spring carnival, and the emergency group text thread. The coworker who says, I can take notes today, and 3 months later is running the whole project because you're so good at keeping things together. The friend who offers to bring chips and ends up hosting the entire Friendsgiving because no one else had a big enough table. The sibling who agrees to help plan mom's birthday and becomes the cruise director of the entire extended family. The gym member who shows someone how to use one machine and somehow becomes the unofficial morning coach. The book club member who suggests a discussion question and ends up facilitating the group for the next 2 years. The classroom parent who volunteers for snack duty and is now coordinating field trips, holiday parties, and emergency substitution plans. The community member who says yes to one committee and wakes up one day with a lanyard, a clipboard, and strong opinions about folding chairs. The person who offers to just help with signups and becomes the human spreadsheet. The friend who agrees to pick someone up from the airport and is now on 3 different carpool rotations. The dog owner who watches a friend's puppy once and is now the neighborhood emergency pet sitter. The teammate who fills in just once and is now the glue holding a group chat together that should have died months ago. The person who raises their hand to pray once and is now somehow leading the devotionals. The volunteer who brings cookies and ends up chairing the entire bake sale. These are the people who are always reliable, always helpful, always saying yes, because we are just the kind of people who can't say no. Why? Because we believe the lies the shadow of shame, known as the martyr, whispers.
Your needs don't matter. Rest is selfish. Limits are weakness. If something needs doing, you should do it. If someone needs help, you need to be the hero and step in. If there's a cost, the one who should pay it is you.
So I say yes before I've checked in with myself or reviewed my calendar to make sure that there are no overlaps. I show up before I've recovered. I give long after giving has stopped being generous and start being compulsory. The thing is that the martyr does not ask me to serve out of love or duty even. It's asking me to perform worthiness. It tells me,
if you don't sacrifice yourself, you won't be able to prove you are good enough. The more they see you suffer, the more they will see what a good person you are. The more you care, the more they will need you. The less you ask for, the less of a burden you will be.
And so I trade authenticity for approval, wholeness for usefulness, choice for obligation, and I call it selflessness. These are the kind of situations where trauma-informed boundaries matter. A boundary is not something you place on someone else. It is something you place on your own behavior. In other words, a boundary is a decision about what you will do to maintain your integrity, safety, or well-being, regardless of what someone else chooses. Boundaries are not demands, rules for other people, or attempts to control other people. They are self-regulation in action, values expressed through our behaviors, and a commitment to act in alignment with our own sense of worthiness. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more right now. In short, boundaries are self-governance, not other people governance. A boundary is a nervous system-informed limit that protects connection without abandoning ourselves. Boundaries are capacity-aware, trauma-informed, and rooted in attachment safety. When we have boundaries, we are able to answer the questions of what I can stay present for without leaving myself. Boundaries are not walls meant to keep people out. They are limits that allow us to stay regulated enough in order to be connected. But here's the dilemma. If I don't believe that I am enough, or that I matter, or if I'm afraid that if I say no, that I am going to lose friends, I'm going to lose support, I'm going to be rejected, neglected, abandoned, betrayed, or even abused, I might not want to use a boundary because what's tied to those wounds are what I've ended up coming to believe about myself. I don't matter. I'm not enough. I can't trust other people are going to respect me. I can't trust that other people are going to understand. I can't trust that other people are going to be supportive. There's nothing I can do. I just have to do this. There are many places where people find it difficult to have boundaries. For example, at work, we might say yes in order to avoid being seen as disposable. In our families, we might choose to stay quiet in order to avoid losing a sense of belonging. In friendships, we might overgive and overcommit ourselves so that we won't be a burden to other people or they won't leave us because they don't feel loved by us. In romantic relationships, we might over-explain in order to avoid abandonment or rejection. In parenting, we might avoid setting limits because we don't want to perpetuate the same kind of wounds that we experienced. And so there's a fear that if we set some of those limits, that's going to cause pain and the other person is going to hurt. In helping professions, we end up taking responsibility for things that were never really ours to take responsibility for. At church, we confuse sacrifice with worth. Online, we always are trying to stay visible so that people will see us. And even with ourselves, we ignore our hunger, we ignore our exhaustion, we ignore overwhelm, because somewhere along the way, our martyr learned that rest must be earned, and you haven't earned that rest yet, because you need to take care of everybody else.
If you say no, you're letting people down. If you take space, you're selfish. If someone is disappointed, you did something wrong. Your needs don't matter. Rest must be earned. You're only valuable when you're useful. Connection requires self-sacrifice.
Trauma-informed boundaries often look quieter than we expect. Sometimes they look like distance instead of debate, where we don't try to convince, we're not defending, we just step back. And sometimes they look like we are ending a conversation before we feel flooded and overwhelmed. It might sound like, I really want to keep talking, but my system is getting overwhelmed, so can we revisit this later? Sometimes it looks like we say less earlier. A short sentence, no explanation, no closing arguments, such as no. Because our nervous system doesn't need the martyr to persuade us that our needs don't matter and that we need to take care of everybody else and that we are obligated to make sure that everyone else is okay and we should just throw ourselves under the bus. What our nervous system needs is relief. And this is hard. This is difficult because many of us were taught that boundaries are mean. Boundaries are selfish. Boundaries result in us rejecting other people, neglecting other people, abandoning other people. And we can't do that because that would just be awful. So we say yes when our heart really wants to say no. We agree to do things when we really don't have the time or space to do that. We overcommit ourselves when there is not enough capacity to do it. We engage in those behaviors because we buy into what the martyr says.
If you say no, you're letting people down. If you take space, you're selfish. If someone is disappointed, you did something wrong.
So when we try to then implement a boundary, it doesn't just feel uncomfortable, it feels dangerous because it threatens the core beliefs that we've been living by for so long. Here's where the power shifts. Boundaries don't start with behavior. They start with what we believe about ourselves. That means that we can challenge those stories, especially the ones that the martyr keeps perpetuating. So instead of the martyr saying that
your needs don't matter,
I practice saying my needs are a part of what makes connection sustainable, and my needs do matter. Instead of the martyr saying,
rest must be earned,
we say, rest protects my capacity to love and serve, and so I need to rest so I can show up the way that I want to. Instead of the martyr saying,
you're only valuable when you're useful,
you rewrite that story and say, my worth is not dependent on my output. Instead of believing the lie that the martyr says that
connection requires self-sacrifice,
we practice a new message. That healthy connection includes my well-being and the other person's well-being too. Yes, there will be times where I might need to sacrifice myself for the relationship, but I can't be the only one who has to do that. And I also need to be wise about when I do that and whether or not I have the bandwidth to do that right now. When we start rewriting those core beliefs and starting to believe new truths that I am enough, that I matter, that I am not responsible for how other people feel, the boundaries stop feeling like we are implementing another attachment wound on somebody else. It starts feeling like I'm living in integrity, that I'm starting to be congruent with my own self. So the invitation is this. As you go through the rest of this week, I want you to take a look at how many times the martyr shows up and tells you that you need to manage this, you need to take responsibility for others' feelings, you need to take care of all the duties, and then ask yourself, what is causing me to buy into what the martyr is telling me? What would it sound like if I spoke from a belief that honors my truth instead of buying into the martyr's message? Because boundaries are not just limits we place in the world. They are the natural expression of a nervous system that no longer believes that it must suffer to belong. And sometimes trauma-informed boundaries sound like this. Yeah, I'm going home after surgery. Not because I don't care, but because I realize I matter too. And honestly, 30 years later, I remember a little bit about what the video was about, but I don't remember anything else. And I'm pretty sure that nobody else remembers it either. So the next time the martyr shows up and tells you that you need to manage the entire world, I encourage you to look at it, call it out, say, hey, martyr, I see you, and then rewrite the belief. And let your limits reflect your worth. And remember, as always, you are enough. You matter, and you are worthy of love and belonging.
You've been listening to the Finding Peace podcast. Special thanks to Intrex for providing the theme music for this season and helping set the tone for reflection, grounding, and hope. If this episode supported you, please like, subscribe, and share the Finding Peace podcast. Your support helps these practical, trauma-informed tools reach more people who are seeking peace, clarity, and connection. To explore more resources, workshops, and upcoming events, visit findingpeaceconsulting.com. The Finding Peace podcast is hosted by best-selling author, psychotherapist, and speaker Troy L. Love. Until next time, remember, you are worthy of love and belonging.